Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Aina and I am oncology pharmacist. Styropyro is apparently one of the most dangerous men on YouTube. And he has this one video series that's actually very important to my profession. It's called Recipes from a 1933 chemistry book. And it's important because if I were a pharmacist during that time, I'd be using this recipe book to compound useful medications for my patients.
Poison, cancer, cyanide poisoning, cancer juice.
Or that would be my intention anyway. So let's watch these together from the least toxic medication all the way up to the most toxic. I'm excited.
Have you ever needed liters of sweat, but didn't want to go through the effort of making it naturally? Lucky for you, here's a nice recipe for artificial perspiration. I love how there's recipes for both new and old sweat here. How lovely. Let's mix some of this stuff up.
Is there actually a use for this? I had to Google this, but I wasn't getting very good answers. The only thing that I found that might explain this is to test for discolorations and color transfer, probably on fabrics. Maybe people just needed to do this test back in 1933? If you have an answer for this, please let me know. One of the ingredients listed in the old sweat version is actually still an active ingredient used in a drug today that you can buy from the drugstore. Let me just go see if I can find it. It's $14.99, kind of expensive. So this is Buckley's cough syrup. As you can see here, for every 5 ml of this syrup, you get 153 milligrams of ammonium carbonate. Let's keep watching to see what Styropyro has to say about this ingredient, and then we're gonna try this out.
I can't help but wonder what the original application of this would be. But without any context given by the book, I guess it leaves it up to our imagination. I will say that the use of lactic acid and ammonium carbonate means that this would probably make a decent mosquito bait in traps.
Right, so sweat is mostly just water, but it has small amounts of electrolytes, like sodium, that's why it tastes salty, urea, and lactic acid. Lactic acid is a chemical that's produced by our muscle cells when we turn sugar into energy, and apparently mosquitoes are attracted to this. I've also heard that different blood types have different levels of attraction for mosquitoes. Like apparently the O type blood is the most attractive for mosquitoes, and I've actually found very small studies to confirm this. So I guess if you're type O blood and you sweat a lot, you'd be mosquitoes' favorite.
Well, here's 2 liters of artificial sweat. Now does it smell like sweat? I can't really say that one does. Let's try the old one. Oh yeah, that one actually does smell a bit like sweat. Huh. How does it taste like sweat?
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, it actually does. It tastes a little bit like sweat. Interesting.
What is up with these chemists tasting their own creations? I guess because the old sweat recipe has salt in it, so it tastes a little bit salty like what sweat does. So the ingredient called ammonium carbonate. It's definitely not an ingredient that's proven to work. Like I can't even find this drug in any of my references, but that was definitely not the case in the olden days. It was very popular since the Romans to the Victorian age, all the way up till World War II. It was very widely used as a smelling salt. It's used to revive people who have fainted. You've probably seen clips like this from old movies. That's because ammonium carbonate releases ammonia gas, and that gas causes your lungs to have an inhalation reflex. That's because it causes respiratory tract irritation, bronchospasm, and pulmonary injury. So basically your lungs are like injured and they're spasming. What does it actually smell like? People have actually described it to smell like dead fish or stale pee.
What the hell is this? It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
So let's smell this Buckley's cough syrup. I know from Buckley's advertisement that it actually tastes really bad, but they've associated this bad taste to the reason why it works.
Buckley's original mixture. It tastes awful, and it works.
I'm a little bit worried. All right. Oh. It has a very strong menthol taste. Oh yeah, it has both menthol and camphor listed in the medicinal ingredients. Ugh, it has a very strong scent that's mixed in with the menthol and camphor, and even the menthol is not able to cover that up. Let's give it a bit of a try. Looks quite harmless. Oh god. It's very spicy, because of how much menthol and camphor there is. A little bit stinky, no sweet flavoring at all. Oh, that was very awful. And I don't think it would work at all, even if I had a cough, because there is no active cough suppressant ingredient in this drink. Alright, in terms of the danger meter, since this is an ingredient that's still sold as a drug today, it is relatively safe, so I'm gonna give it a 1.5 out of 10.
If you're an American with asthma, you probably have to pay a lot for inhalers. So instead, consider this homeopathic alternative, asthma relief cigarette. I bet your lungs feel amazing after one of these. I'm kidding, this is a horrible idea.
So for the longest time before pharmacy school, I didn't know the difference between like herbal medicine versus homeopathic medicine. I thought they were just all things with natural ingredients. But after learning about homeopathy in school, I have a clear understanding of what it is. Homeopathic medicine is the idea that drugs should be diluted again and again until the final product might not even have a single molecule of the drug left. What's the logic behind this? I don't know. Apparently, it's thought that the water that you dilute this in has some sort of memory, and the water memory has active effect to treat your disease.
The way of water has no beginning around and no seed gives, and the seed takes.
So I was going to give this one a useless out of 10, but then I realized the recipe is telling you to make it into a cigarette and smoke it. So I'm going to change my answer to lung cancer out of 10.
This one's just in time for the never-ending cough season. It's a sore throat remedy. Now, the ingredients in here look pretty sketchy, so I guess I'm just gonna have to make some and see what it does. I'm not sure what the function of any of these ingredients is, honestly. And in fact, the recipe is quite toxic. Now, you'd think that mixing a strong Lewis acid with a potent oxidizer and an organic salt...
Oh my god, what is happening?
Oh. I don't think that was supposed to happen.
And you're supposed to drink that? Wow, can you imagine if a pharmacist made this in their compounding lab? It looks pretty impressive actually. It's like putting on a fire show.
Maybe those beautiful flames are supposed to distract you from your sore throat. Either that, or I made a bad assumption. When the recipe called for a tincture, I figured it meant making a tincture of all that stuff. But in hindsight, it probably meant using a ferric chloride tincture as one of the ingredients. That would make more sense, because tinctures of ferric chloride were used in medicine a long time ago.
Yeah, he's right about this actually. It seems like doctors back in the day used this pretty generously. They used this for many different conditions, and I found these in this one paper. They can use it for anemia, for neuralgia, which is nerve pain, and apparently it's great for appetite and digestion. And it says here, quote, "Iron constitutes a necessary integral part of the red blood corpuscle, and may thus be said to be a food rather than a medicine." I mean, there is some truth to that. Iron is important to us, but you have to take it in the right formulation. But then later on in this paper, which is written by a dentist, it goes on to say that this tincture is highly corrosive. And he says that's because all the ferric chloride tincture are made from hydrogen chloride, and it's impossible to get rid of all the hydrogen chloride in the final product. So imagine what drinking hydrogen chloride would do to your teeth. And the other ingredient in this recipe, potassium chlorate, I found out is a very common ingredient used in mouthwashes and gargles. But because it's also a very strong oxidizing agent, it's also used in like fireworks and firearms. And in my toxicity references, it says that inhalation of the mist can cause sore throat, so I'm not sure how it's supposed to treat sore throat. Now, I can't find anything in my references to say that these two ingredients can cause cancer, but the immediate toxicity is bad enough. This is gonna be a 8 out of 10 on the danger scale.
I don't know what it is with this book and inhaling chloroform and ether, but here's another brilliant concoction to inhale while you're sick. Now seriously, what's this even supposed to do? Kill germs or put you in a coma? Now those other ingredients are no cakewalk either. Phenol and creosote? Jeez.
Wow, so this recipe obviously think that one type of drug that's used to put people to sleep before surgery is not enough. It needs two of them, chloroform and ether. So both of these compounds were used very widely back in the day as an anesthetic before surgery. And if you haven't checked it out yet, I talked about these two anesthetic in my Niall Red reaction video where he makes chloroform, and I'll leave that link down below. I also noticed that the unit of this recipe is in grams, and it's wild that we actually still use that unit today on prescriptions. So 1 gram is equal to 1/8 of an ounce, so that's just under 5 mils. I looked up this old paper to talk about the concentration of chloroform that was used during anesthesia, and it says that 2 to 4% of chloroform was used. So if we take this recipe, there's 8 grams of stuff in total, and there's 2 grams of chloroform, so that's 25% of chloroform? Am I doing my math wrong here? That's a lot. But that's the least of our worries here. The next ingredient, tincture of iodine. Sounds commonly enough, right? We still sell iodine tincture today in drugstores, and it's commonly used for cleaning wounds. Even though medically, we actually don't recommend this because iodine actually is corrosive and it damages the skin cells, so it makes healing actually takes longer. But if you were to inhale iodine vapor, which is what this recipe is asking you to do, it can cause coughing and shortness of breath. And even in severe cases, it can cause fluid buildup in the lungs. But that's not the worst part of it. Creosote is straight up a carcinogen, but it was actually widely used as a medicine. It was used as a drug to reverse bleeding, an antiseptic, a narcotic, which is for pain, and a diuretic, which makes you pee more. I feel like I noticed a general theme here. Like back in the day, one drug can be used for such a wide variety of conditions that seem to be not related to each other at all. Oh, it's kind of like that purple magical substance called Shimmer from Arcane, or like Spice from Doom. But creosote has been found to cause skin and lung cancer in people. So yeah, this one gets a cancer out of 10 as well.
This one is so bad. Eat 3 grams of a mercury salt for stomach gas? And this would straight up poison you. Whatever mercury you'd absorb would stay with you for life. And you know what? Your poop after this would be so toxic, you'd need a hazmat team to clean it up. I have no idea how people survived it all back then.
Alright, let's set aside the toxicity of this recipe for now and just focus on the presentation. As a pharmacist, to be fair, I really like the presentation of this recipe. If I received this prescription in 1933, I'd feel pretty confident about making it for my patient. Because number one, it's very clear what this prescription does. It's to relieve stomach gas. We take all the guesswork out of it, unlike some previous prescriptions we just saw. Number two, it only has 3 simple ingredients, and we'll get to this in a second. And number 3, it uses very straightforward measuring units, grams. I could just turn on my electronic scale and, oh wait, I meant measure it on my apothecary scale. So the ingredient that contains poisonous mercury, calomel. And oh my god, was this a popular drug back in the day. In the 19th century, calomel was considered the miracle drug. It's basically used to treat every disease like syphilis, gout, ingrown toenail, and cancer. And of course, mercury being poisonous and all of that. The first thing that people notice is that they got bloody diarrhea after taking this drug. But doctors back then thought this was a good thing because you're getting rid of the disease from your body. Maybe that explains why this is used as a stomach gas relief in this prescription. But of course, nowadays we know that's acute mercury poisoning. Nowadays, the most common type of mercury poisoning is from eating contaminated seafood. But this usually happens over a very long period of time because you're only taking a small dose each time. And what people usually notice is nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. And when the poisoning gets worse, they can turn into neurological symptoms like headache and dementia. And then eventually you could die from mercury poisoning. So even though this would be an extremely simple and elegant recipe to make in the 1930s, I'd have to give it a 9 out of 10 on the danger scale. Oh, and also, it adds for lactose in this recipe. Come on, that's totally not friendly to people who are lactose intolerant. It's gonna give them stomach upset. I'm gonna change it to 9.5 out of 10.
If you're like most people and stare at screens all day, there's a good chance you've dealt with dry and irritated eyes at some point. So what's the solution? Mercury salts and opium applied directly to your eyeballs. If that doesn't make your eyes feel better, I don't know what will.
Oh my god. Let's see what happens if you apply mercury directly to your eyes. Ah, wonderful. Blindness. Now this recipe, Styropyro himself named it cancer stick, so let's check out how cancerous this one really is.
This is one of the most ridiculous ideas I've ever seen. It's a recipe for a self-igniting cigarette. I guess the motivation here was, why carry a pack of smokes and a box of matches when you can just combine them into one? Now if the idea wasn't crazy enough, check out that ingredient list. Potassium dichromate? I mean, yeah, smoking will give you cancer too, but this is just speed running it.
He's absolutely right about this one. Potassium dichromate is highly carcinogenic. We call this class hexavalent chromium. And when breathed in, these can cause lung cancer and nasopharyngeal cancers. But this chemical can be actually common in the welding industry or people who work with stainless steel. The chromium in this compound can be absorbed into the cell and directly attacks your DNA and damages it. And that's what causes the cancer.
And the burning sulfur? That's awful. Oh, this one's gonna be fun.
I can't believe he's actually gonna try to make this.
There's actually 2 recipes here, where the first one isn't quite so horrible. Now, they don't say which form of carbon to use, so I used lamp black for this because I like the sparks that it makes. As for the second recipe, I mixed the glues with water and then broke out the potassium dichromate.
Oh my god, don't breathe it in, please. I hope he's holding his breath or wearing the safest amount of PPEs while filming this.
Now, don't be fooled. This stuff may look irresistibly delicious, but I assure you, it'll mess you up in nearly every way imaginable. In fact, it typically gets a level 4 health risk in most safety data sheets, which is the highest it goes.
Yep, because it can also cause blindness and infertility.
To make matters worse, the completed mix looks just like cheese sauce. Like seriously, I just want to put it on crackers and eat it. I can't do that though, because it's like deadly or whatever.
No, don't do that.
Anyway, here's what these glorified matches look like after a few days of drying. Alright, let's start with the first mix. What the heck? This mix was hard to ignite, but once it lit, it was surprisingly energetic and shot burning embers everywhere. I probably used
That's
too
a
much
very
of the
cool
mix
shot.
on the end of the stick in hindsight, but at least it made an awesome effect. Now to try the real cancer sticks. Huh, that felt just like a normal match. Slow-mo shows that it still managed to shoot off a few embers, but nothing like the first formula. This one was easier to ignite too, but of course, it comes at the cost of being incredibly toxic.
Yeah, this is definitely getting a cancer out of 10. And last but not least, we have cyanide.
This book is very generous with its use of cyanide. Whether you need to clean some coins or just keep your engine running smoothly, they always find a way to throw some cyanide in the mix. Now, lucky for us, they also include this convenient procedure for dealing with your inevitable cyanide poisoning. The first steps aren't anything crazy, but check out step 4.
So it's a recipe to reverse cyanide poisoning. Let's go through each step and see if it makes sense. So, if swallowed, step 1. 3% hydrogen peroxide solution in large quantities or a freshly prepared mixture of equal volume of 5% solution of ferrous sulfate and sodium carbonate, followed by immediately evacuation of the stomach. This is probably just a mixture of things to try to make you puke. And I do like that it's saying you want immediate evacuation of the stomach. That means you want to get everything out of the stomach. But nowadays they can stick a tube down your stomach and use suction to remove everything. So step 2. Stimulate and combat collapse. Oh, that's perfect. We have that smelling salt recipe that we just made a few minutes ago. It should revive you in no time. I'm just kidding, guys. This step would make sense as well. We would want to keep the patient stable, remove all the toxins as much as we can, and eventually we would want to revive them. So step 3, artificial respiration and pulmotor. Oh, artificial respiration is actually pretty good advice. It's kind of like saying give CPR to your patient. Alright, so let's see what he has to say about step 4.
That's one of the best sentences I've ever read. If patient survives, give a medic, and after vomiting, supportive of strong coffee with brandy or whiskey. Let's party, you survived.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Professor Lupin giving Harry chocolate after he faints from the Dementors in Prisoner of Azkaban. So yeah, to actually treat cyanide poisoning nowadays, we give a special type of vitamin B12. This is called hydroxycobalamin or vitamin B12A. The reason why it can treat cyanide poisoning is because it converts cyanide into cyanocobalamin, which is much less toxic and you can actually just pee it out. So I'm super glad that we have found something better than brandy and whiskey. So on the danger scale, cyanide would definitely be a 10 of 10 because you can immediately die from poisoning. But since this is a recipe to reverse that, and it doesn't seem hugely toxic, although drinking a large amount of hydrogen peroxide could potentially burn your entire stomach tract and give you stomach bleeding, but I think they really tried their best. So I'll give this one a 5 out of 10. Wow, that was very educational, guys. I'm so glad I'm not a pharmacist working in 1933 with these deadly chemicals that could kill me. I work in a cancer hospital, so I still deal with hazardous drugs. But nowadays, we have very high standards of protective equipment, so we try to keep everyone safe. Now, I'm gonna go brush my teeth for 5 minutes and try to get that disgusting cough syrup taste out of my mouth. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more contents like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!